Video, I want to actually talk about how to actually get through a PhD program and do it fairly successfully, or at least get to the other side, and that's all that matters. So, if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Maslock. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole Reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor for, to help me out as much as I possibly can. So when you're in graduate school and you're trying to get through a PhD program, it is a lengthy process. It is really challenging to do that. So for many of us, it is anywhere from, if you're really, really fast, and it's kind of very unusual, 3 years. But for most of us, it is 4 to 7 years. I took 5 years to actually complete it. Then I spent a couple more years actually doing a postdoc after that and doing some more research and stuff. And I think that's very normal for anybody that is in graduate school or doing, a PhD program. This is on top of doing a master's, for example. So there's a long process that happens, and throughout that entire process, you're not making that much money. In fact, the last 2 years that I was doing it, I didn't get paid anything, and I was trying to find different. Actually, it was about a year that I didn't get paid anything, and then I found, thankfully, I found sort of postdoctoral funds that paid for some of it from somebody that was very generous in my life. And so there's, challenges that you face throughout the process, and we all have to deal with this. And, the biggest thing is actually not the sort of financial, basically being at the poverty level in terms of your income for a very long time. That's not the biggest thing. And although that is a stress that everybody sort of deals with this, the two biggest things that we have often is that we're living life throughout the process, but then we're expected to perform at a certain level. And that performance means that you are constantly getting negated. You're constantly getting negative feedback, and you're constantly being told that your ideas are not that great. And this is a very natural process, a natural thing that you go throughout the PhD program, or any PhD program that you're in, or any doctoral program, is that you begin to really, really doubt yourself. So at about 3 months in, maybe even 2 months into a PhD program, you start losing a tremendous amount of confidence. And as you get towards more and more and more throughout the process, especially after you do your dissertation, your comprehensive exams, and then you're at that sort of latter stage of, ABD stage, you really start to lose confidence in yourself, and you start believing that you're not that great. And you start believing that you don't necessarily have any sort of skills, and that you're really, really, you're just very down on yourself. And the issue is that you have no comparison against how other people are in your same situation. You have no idea that you're being sort of refined, and you are getting better, and you're sharper, and you come to this realization after about 10 years out, or even 5 years out of your PhD program. You start teaching other people, and you're like, holy cow, this is easy for me now to sort of see these things, but it's very hard for those people to see those things. And so you do know that you've understood something, and it's coming together. But what I really want to talk about in this video is how to actually get through this process, and how do you actually deal with this. And this is, personal experience, but also watching other people dealing with it and going through all of these struggles. Because, I interact with different people of various sort of different roles as, advisor myself, from time to time of just talking to friends and stuff. And I think a really big thing in terms of dealing with a PhD program and getting through a PhD program and getting to the other side is learning how to sort of separate yourself, your emotional self, from actually what you're doing in the sort of work process. And I was thinking about this today, that it's very important to separate, in a lot of different ways, but I think we have to deal with this a little bit more in academia, in sort of the research game, is that we really have to think about how do you actually separate who I am, this sort of emotional state, from actually getting the work done. And once you actually get into the work and you're actually in that flow state, it's really easy to get through that process. And it becomes very fun to get through, the day to day. So when I sit down and I spend 20 minutes working on something, it becomes really fun until the end of the day, and I'm exhausted and all that kind of stuff. But throughout the process, you have to get into that mode, you have to get into that stage. And what you have to sort of learn to do is disassociate that sort of emotional aspect of what you're doing. And that emotional aspect is a very real part of it. But once you become sort of, in some ways, you become sort of numb to the emotional aspect of it and numb with dealing with all the other sort of things that are going on around you. When you get to that stage, you become very sort of confident and you actually get through it. Now, I know that's not something that you want to hear, but, hold on a second. I think that there is something really important that I've learned through all of this, is that you have sort of these two states, and you deal with two states. So sort of the rational self that will sit down and get things done and execute, and you know that things will actually happen, and it'll become very clear that you actually get these things, and your returns are going to happen, and 10, 20 years out, and it's fine and dandy. But that emotional state, and learning that you actually do have this emotional state that you have to not only regulate. I don't think that that's actually a great sort of term, is regulating the sort of emotional state that you have, but learning how to engage with it, and learning how to actually become a more fuller person. So you can learn to realize that this emotional state that you have, it is a powerful tool. And sometimes you want to engage with it, and you should engage with it all the time. And sometimes you don't want to, and you want to sort of push that thing aside and learn how to deal with that. So, what do I mean by that? This emotional state that you actually have, the sort of dealing with things around you, and dealing with this sort of emotions of doing these sort of long-term projects, you have to actually engage with it once in a while. Have a good cry. Have a good complaint fest. Actually go through and talk to somebody. Sometimes get angry just to get rid of all of that emotional stuff, and that is healthy. That's the process. And I've learned that it is a very healthy process to sort of do those kind of things instead of sort of suppressing that all the way through. But you also have to engage with other people and talk to other people about the process and talk with what you're dealing with. But at the same time, continue to execute on something and continue to work forward on something. And so you're constantly kind of like letting off steam, I guess, right? So you could think of a factory where you're letting off steam to let the pressure out of something that's happening. And you have to figure out different ways that you can, regulate that process. I don't like that term again, but, engage with that process. So engaging with your emotional state by talking to other people, but also, engaging with your emotional state by going for, a run, getting some aggressive energy out, going for a walk, whatever it is, where you are just really going nuts to get that sort of aggression out of your body, that sort of frustration out of your body, so that you can keep going and become, a better, more fuller self. And now all of this stuff applies in life in general, right? Like, this is nothing that's kind of new and novel or anything like that. But I think it is especially important for people that are doing these long-term projects, like doing, a PhD, for example, or doing research that takes a long time, is learning how to deal with this and engaging with it, and being okay with who you are as a person. And the more that you sort of balance that, that rational self, right, that you can execute, and as well as that emotional sort of polar person that you are, the more that you can sort of work with it and be okay with it and be open with it and recognize that that is who you are as a person, I think the more that you can move forward with these different various aspects of your life. And so I think, and this is where I've always said that you actually become you learn a lot more about yourself throughout the process than you actually learn about the education. You actually learn about what you're looking at. And as you deal with this, and as you struggle with this, it's totally normal. We all deal with it, we all struggle with it. And it is the nature of the beast of dealing with this. And if you're an inventor that was struggling with something, or you were, an entrepreneur that was building something out that's going to take 10 years or whatever, you always have these same struggles that you're dealing with. If you if you have a big family and you're trying to grow a family that is coming together, and you know that there's struggles that are, we're all, all the sort of emotional things that happen as a family, you know that it's a process, and you're always sort of juggling and thinking about how can I regulate, or how can I not regulate, but how can I engage with my sort of emotional self to actually get things done in the world around me. And so that not only everything else is becoming, better because of what you're doing, but also yourself, and you're becoming a much more sort of complete and whole person. So with that, hopefully this helps you. And I gave you a lot of different tips in this, and hopefully it sort of frames your mind to get through to a PhD program and actually becoming a better person at the end of it. I hope that's my end goal, is that you watch this and you really sort of turn a circle, or you turn around and you become not a sort of struggling, fledgling PhD student or graduate student, but you just become a decent human being that is becoming whole and becoming more of yourself. So with that, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.